My niece recorded my 89-year-old grandma signing a fake will using edited audio. I'm audio forensics expert who proved it was fabricated. My niece Stephanie created a fake video recording supposedly showing my 89-year-old grandmother Catherine signing a new will that left Stephanie the entire $6.3 million estate. The video showed grandma sitting at her kitchen table with documents in front of her. Stephanie's voice asking grandma if she was signing her will voluntarily, and grandma saying, "Yes, I am." Stephanie saying, "Do you want to leave everything to me?" And grandma saying, "Yes, I do." The video appeared to show grandma signing documents while confirming she was changing her will to benefit Stephanie exclusively. It looked like clear evidence that grandma had made these changes knowingly and voluntarily. When grandma died 3 months later, Stephanie presented this video to the probate court, claiming it proved grandma's intentions overrode the written will from 2019 that split everything equally among 4 grandchildren. Stephanie argued that while the 2019 will was the formal document, the video showed grandma's true final wishes to leave everything to Stephanie, who'd been her primary caregiver. The video was so convincing that even family members started doubting whether the equal distribution was really what grandma wanted. But I'm Dr. Michael Patterson, 44 years old, an audio forensic analyst specializing in detecting manipulated recordings. I've testified in over 200 criminal trials about altered audio evidence. I can identify spliced recordings, detect synthetic voices, prove when audio has been edited or fabricated. When I watched Stephanie's video, something immediately seemed wrong. Grandma's voice sounded off. The timing of her responses was unnatural. The background noise didn't match the room. I knew this recording had been manipulated, and I was determined to prove it. This is the story of how my niece created a fake video using edited audio clips to fabricate evidence that my grandmother wanted her to inherit everything, and how I used audio forensic analysis to prove the recording was fraudulent, expose Stephanie's sophisticated fraud, get her convicted of forgery and elder abuse, send her to prison for 14 years, and preserve grandma's true wishes. My grandmother, Catherine Patterson, was 89 years old when she died in March 2024. She'd lived a full, vibrant life. She'd been a journalist for 50 years, working for major newspapers. She'd traveled the world. She'd been sharp and independent until her final days. Grandma had substantial wealth she'd accumulated through careful saving and wise investments. She owned her home in Portland, Oregon, worth $1.8 million. She had investment accounts worth $3.9 million. She had savings and other assets worth $600,000. Total estate, approximately $6.3 million. Grandma's will from 2019 divided her estate equally among her 4 grandchildren. Myself, Michael, age 44, my brother David, age 41, my cousin Stephanie, age 38, and my cousin Amanda, age 36. Each grandchild would inherit approximately $1.575 million. It was fair and equal and reflected grandma's belief that family should be treated equally. Stephanie had always been financially unstable. She'd gone through multiple failed businesses. She'd accumulated significant debt. By 2023, she owed over $300,000 to various creditors and was facing potential bankruptcy. She needed money desperately, and she knew grandma had millions. In June 2023, Stephanie started visiting grandma much more frequently than ever before. She'd show up at grandma's house several times a week, claiming she wanted to help with errands and housework. Grandma appreciated the help and the company. She told me during our weekly phone calls that Stephanie had really been stepping up and being so attentive. I was pleased thinking Stephanie was finally growing up and taking responsibility. I didn't know Stephanie had ulterior motives. What none of us realized was that Stephanie was recording grandma constantly during these visits. Stephanie would bring her phone and leave it on the counter or table recording conversations. She'd ask grandma seemingly innocent questions and record the answers. She was building a library of grandma's voice saying various phrases. Yes, I do. I am. I want to. That's correct. Absolutely. Stephanie was collecting raw audio material that she could manipulate. Stephanie had researched audio editing extensively. She'd learned how to splice together different audio clips to create fabricated statements, how to match background noise and room tone, how to adjust timing and pitch to make edits sound natural. She'd practiced with recording editing software, becoming proficient at manipulation. Her plan was to create a fake video that would appear to show Grandma changing her will in Stephanie's favor. The video would be her insurance policy to steal the inheritance. In September 2023, Stephanie executed her plan. She visited Grandma with a video camera, claiming she wanted to record Grandma sharing family stories for posterity. Grandma agreed, thinking it was a nice gesture. Stephanie set up the camera, pointing at Grandma sitting at her kitchen table. She recorded about 30 minutes of Grandma talking about various topics, family memories, her career, life advice. During this recording, Stephanie placed documents on the table in front of Grandma. The documents looked like estate planning papers, but they were actually just blank pages in official-looking folders. Stephanie was creating video footage that showed Grandma sitting at a table with documents, appearing to be signing something. What Grandma thought was a nice family video project was actually Stephanie manufacturing visual evidence for her fraud. After this filming session, Stephanie had what she needed. She had 30 minutes of video showing Grandma at her kitchen table with documents. She had hours of recorded audio of Grandma's voice from previous visits, saying various phrases. Now she just needed to edit everything together to create the fraud. Stephanie spent weeks carefully editing. She took the video of Grandma sitting at the table. She took audio clips of her own voice, asking questions about the will. Then she spliced in audio clips of Grandma's voice saying, "Yes, yes, I do, I am," making it appear that Grandma was responding to Stephanie's questions about signing a new will. The final product appeared to show Stephanie asking Grandma, "Are you signing your will today?" And Grandma saying, "Yes, I am." Stephanie asking, "Do you want to leave everything to me?" And Grandma saying, "Yes, I do." Stephanie asking, "Are you doing this voluntarily?" And Grandma saying, "Absolutely." The video looked and sounded genuine. To someone who didn't know about audio forensics, it appeared to be authentic evidence of Grandma's wishes. Stephanie was careful about not showing this video to anyone while Grandma was alive. She knew that if Grandma saw it or heard about it, Grandma would deny ever saying those things, and the fraud would be exposed. Stephanie waited. She continued visiting Grandma regularly. She continued playing the devoted granddaughter. She waited for Grandma to die so she could present her fabricated evidence. Grandma died in March 2024 of natural causes at age 89. She'd had a stroke and passed peacefully in her sleep. At her funeral, Stephanie cried and talked about how close she'd been to Grandma and how much she'd miss her. It was all performance. Within 2 weeks of Grandma's death, Stephanie filed a petition in probate court. She presented the 2019 will that left everything split equally, but she also presented her video recording arguing that it showed Grandma's true final wishes superseded the written will. She claimed that while the 2019 will was the formal document, Grandma had expressed verbally her desire to leave everything to Stephanie, who'd been her primary caregiver. Stephanie argued the video was clear evidence of Grandma's intent and should be honored. The probate court scheduled a hearing to determine whether the video was authentic and whether it should override the written will. My brother David, my cousin Amanda, and I were shocked. We'd never heard Grandma say anything about changing her will. We'd never heard her express any desire to leave everything to Stephanie. It didn't make sense. I watched the video carefully. I'm a professional audio forensic analyst. I've spent 20 years analyzing recordings for law enforcement and legal proceedings. I've detected thousands of manipulated audio files. I know what authentic recordings sound like, and this one immediately triggered red flags. Grandma's voice sounded slightly off. The pitch was natural, but there were subtle artifacts that suggested editing. The timing of her responses was too perfect. When someone is having a natural conversation, there are pauses, overlaps, interruptions. Grandma's responses came exactly on cue with no hesitation. That's characteristic of spliced audio, not natural speech. The background room tone was inconsistent. Authentic recordings have continuous ambient noise that stays constant. This video had subtle shifts in background noise at exactly the points where Grandma was supposedly responding. That's a classic sign that audio from different times was spliced together. I was 99% certain this recording had been manipulated, but I needed to prove it with technical analysis that would stand up in court. I requested the original video file from Stephanie through legal discovery. Stephanie's attorney initially refused, claiming it was privileged. I argued that if she was using the video as evidence, she had to provide the original file for authentication. The court agreed and ordered Stephanie to provide the complete, unedited, original file. When Stephanie finally provided it, I noticed something immediately. The file metadata showed it had been created in September 2023, but the file had been modified dozens of times between September and March. Authentic recordings don't get modified repeatedly. They're recorded once and stay unchanged. The modification history alone suggested manipulation. I loaded the audio into professional forensic analysis software. I used Spectral analysis to visualize the audio frequencies over time. What I found was definitive proof of editing at every point where Grandma was supposedly responding to questions about the will. There were clear discontinuities in the spectral pattern. The frequencies would shift abruptly, the background noise would change subtly. These shifts were invisible to the casual listener but showed up clearly in spectral analysis. I could see exactly where Stephanie had spliced different audio clips together. The edits were at the exact points where Grandma said, "Yes, I am," "Yes, I do," "Absolutely." Stephanie had taken those phrases from completely different contexts and inserted them as responses to her questions about the will. I performed waveform analysis, examining the amplitude patterns over time. Authentic, continuous speech has natural flow and variation. Edited speech shows characteristic signatures at splice points. I found those signatures throughout the video. Every one of Grandma's supposed responses showed evidence of being spliced from different source audio. I used error level analysis to detect compression artifacts. When audio is edited and resaved, it leaves compression artifacts that are detectable. I found those artifacts at every edit point. I analyzed the room tone, which is the background ambient sound. Authentic recordings have consistent room tone throughout. This recording had room tone that shifted subtly at edit points. The shifts were only a few decibels, but they were detectable and proved. The audio came from multiple different recording sessions spliced together. I performed pitch analysis, voice stress analysis, and temporal analysis. Every analytical method showed the same result. This recording had been extensively edited. It was not a continuous, authentic recording of Grandma saying she wanted to change her will. It was a fabrication created by splicing together audio from multiple sources. But I needed to go further. I needed to find the source audio that Stephanie had used to create her fabricated responses. I requested all of Stephanie's phone and computer files through legal discovery. Her attorney fought this aggressively, but the court ordered it. When I received Stephanie's files, I found exactly what I was looking for. Stephanie had dozens of audio files recorded during her visits to Grandma. I found the exact files she'd used to create the fabricated will video. In one audio file from July 2023, Stephanie was asking Grandma about her favorite foods. "You like salmon, don't you, Grandma?" Grandma responded, "Yes, I do. That's my favorite." Stephanie had taken just the "yes, I do" part and used it in her fabricated will video, making it appear Grandma was saying "yes, I do" when asked if she wanted to leave everything to Stephanie. In reality, Grandma had been talking about salmon. I found source files for every single one of Grandma's supposed responses in the will video. "Yes, I am" came from a conversation about gardening. "Absolutely" came from a discussion about travel. Every phrase had been taken out of context from completely different conversations and spliced into the will video. I could prove with certainty that Stephanie had fabricated the entire recording. I prepared a comprehensive forensic report documenting all my findings, spectral analysis showing discontinuities at edit points, waveform analysis showing splice signatures, room tone analysis showing background shifts, compression artifact analysis, source audio comparison showing where each phrase came from. I created visual exhibits showing the editing clearly. I prepared to testify that this video was absolutely fabricated and that Grandma never actually said the things Stephanie claimed she'd said about changing her will. I presented my report to my attorney and we filed a motion to exclude the video as fraudulent evidence. We also filed a motion to investigate Stephanie for attempted fraud and forgery. The probate court held a hearing in May 2024. Stephanie's attorney argued the video was authentic and showed Grandma's clear intent. I testified for 4 hours, explaining my forensic analysis in detail. I showed the spectral analysis charts with clear visual evidence of audio splicing. I showed the waveform signatures at splice points. I showed the room tone shifts. I showed the source audio files proving where each phrase had come from. I played the original audio clips so the judge could hear Grandma saying, "Yes, I do," about salmon, and then hear how Stephanie had spliced that same phrase into the will video, making it appear to be about the inheritance. The evidence was overwhelming and undeniable. Stephanie's attorney tried to challenge my analysis, claiming audio forensics was subjective. I walked through my credentials, my 20 years of experience, my testimony in over 200 trials, with my conclusions being upheld every time. I explained that modern audio forensics uses objective scientific methods and produces measurable results. The spectral discontinuities I found weren't subjective opinions, they were measurable facts. The judge was convinced. The probate court ruled that the video was fraudulent and would be given no weight. The court found that Stephanie had deliberately fabricated evidence by editing together audio clips to create false statements. The court upheld the 2019 written will, splitting the estate equally among 4 grandchildren. Stephanie's attempt to steal the inheritance failed, but more importantly, the court referred the matter to the Portland Police Department for criminal investigation. The police opened a fraud investigation immediately. They obtained all my forensic evidence. They interviewed Stephanie, who initially denied any wrongdoing. She claimed the video was genuine and that my analysis was wrong, but when confronted with the source audio files showing exactly where each phrase came from, Stephanie's story fell apart. She eventually admitted she'd edited the video, but claimed she'd only done it to document what Grandma had verbally told her. She said Grandma had expressed a desire to leave everything to Stephanie, but hadn't put it in writing. So Stephanie created the video to preserve Grandma's supposed verbal wishes. This explanation made no sense. If Grandma had actually expressed these wishes, why would Stephanie need to splice together audio from completely different conversations? The police didn't believe her. Stephanie was arrested in June 2024. She was charged with attempted theft by fraud, forgery of audio evidence, elder abuse, and conspiracy. The forgery charge was particularly serious because she'd created false evidence purporting to show a legal transaction. Oregon law treats forgery of legal documents very seriously, especially when it involves exploiting elderly people. Stephanie was facing up to 25 years in prison on the combined charges. Stephanie's trial began in September 2024. The prosecution presented my complete forensic analysis. They showed the spectral charts proving editing. They showed the source audio files. They played the original clips and the fabricated will video side by side so the jury could hear exactly how Stephanie had manipulated Grandma's voice. They presented Stephanie's own files showing her research into audio editing techniques. They presented evidence that Stephanie had practiced editing before creating the will video. They showed that Stephanie had deliberately recorded Grandma during visits, specifically to build a library of phrases she could use for fabrication. Every piece of evidence showed calculated, deliberate fraud. I testified for 6 hours. I walked the jury through the forensic science of audio analysis. I explained how spectral analysis works and why the discontinuities I found prove editing. I showed them the waveform patterns and splice signatures. I demonstrated the room tone shifts using audio playback. I showed them the source audio files and explained how Stephanie had taken "Yes, I do" from a conversation about salmon and made it sound like Grandma was talking about the will. I made the science accessible to lay people. And by the end of my testimony, the jury completely understood that Stephanie had fabricated the evidence. Several jurors looked disgusted when they realized Stephanie had manipulated her dying grandmother's voice to steal millions. Stephanie's defense tried to claim she genuinely believed she was documenting Grandma's wishes, that she hadn't intended to deceive anyone. This defense was destroyed by the evidence of Stephanie's research into audio editing, her practice sessions, her deliberate collection of Grandma's voice clips. Everything showed premeditation and intent. Stephanie took the stand and claimed she'd only been trying to honor Grandma's wishes. Under cross-examination, the prosecutor destroyed her. "If you were honoring Grandma's wishes, why did you take audio clips from conversations about salmon and gardening and splice them into questions about the will? Why did you hide this video from Grandma while she was alive? Why did you research audio manipulation techniques?" Stephanie had no good answers. Her story didn't make sense, and the jury saw through it. The prosecution also presented testimony from my brother David and cousin Amanda. Both testified that Grandma had never expressed any desire to change her will, that Grandma had always been clear about wanting equal distribution among all 4 grandchildren, that Stephanie's claim about Grandma wanting to leave everything to her was completely false. The jury heard how Stephanie had manufactured not just the video evidence, but the entire narrative about being Grandma's special caregiver. Grandma had been independent and didn't need a primary caregiver. Stephanie had simply visited more frequently than usual in her final year, which didn't entitle her to the entire estate. The jury deliberated 9 hours. They found Stephanie guilty on all charges: attempted theft by fraud, forgery, elder abuse, and conspiracy. Her face went pale when the verdicts were read. She'd been confident her audio editing was sophisticated enough that no one could prove it was fake. She'd underestimated that her uncle was literally an expert in detecting exactly this type of fraud. Sentencing was in November 2024. The judge was harsh. "Miss Patterson, you engaged in sophisticated, calculated fraud to steal from your deceased grandmother's estate. You manipulated audio recordings of your grandmother's voice to create false evidence. You researched and practiced audio editing techniques specifically for this purpose. You violated your grandmother's trust and memory by using her voice to fabricate statements she never made. You attempted to steal over $4 million from your cousins. You showed no remorse and maintained false stories until confronted with undeniable evidence. The court finds that you are manipulative and dangerous. You used technical skills to commit fraud in a way that shows significant criminal sophistication. I am sentencing you to 14 years in state prison with no possibility of parole for 12 years. You will pay restitution of $50,000 for legal expenses incurred by your family. You are permanently banned from serving as executor or trustee of any estate, and your conviction will include a notation about audio evidence forgery to alert future courts if you attempt similar schemes. 14 years. Stephanie was 38. She'd be 54 at minimum before parole consideration. She'd spent months creating her audio fraud, and she'd spend 14 years paying for it. The criminal conviction meant the probate proceedings concluded immediately. The 2019 will was enforced as Grandma intended. Each of the 4 grandchildren inherited approximately $1.575 million, equal distribution exactly as Grandma wanted. Stephanie's share share went into a trust that will pay her restitution, obligations, and legal debts. Before she can access any remaining funds when released from prison, she'll end up with far less than the equal share she would have received if she just accepted Grandma's will. Her greed and fraud cost her dearly. Stephanie is currently incarcerated at Coffee Creek Correctional Facility in Oregon, serving year 1 of her minimum 12-year sentence. She's written letters to family members trying to explain or justify her actions, claiming she really believed Grandma wanted her to have more. Every letter has been returned unopened. There is no explanation or justification for fabricating audio evidence using a dead grandmother's voice. Stephanie made calculated, deliberate choices to research fraud techniques, collect audio material, practice editing, create fabricated evidence, and attempt to steal millions. She deserves every year of that 14-year sentence. Her criminal record means when she's released, she'll have a conviction, specifically noting audio evidence forgery. She'll never be able to work in media, audio production, legal services, or any field involving evidentiary materials. She'll be a 54-year-old felon with unique infamy for manipulating her grandmother's voice. She destroyed her reputation and her life, trying to steal money she never got to keep. I've used Stephanie's case extensively in my professional presentations about audio forensics. I present it at conferences for forensic analysts, law enforcement, and legal professionals. I explain the technical methods I use to detect the manipulation. I show the spectral analysis and waveform comparisons. I discuss the importance of metadata examination and source audio investigation. I use the case to demonstrate how sophisticated audio fraud can be and how thorough forensic analysis can detect it. If Stephanie's fraud can help train other forensic analysts to catch similar schemes, then something educational came from her crimes. I've also written papers about the case for forensic science journals, discussing the specific techniques used to detect audio splicing and the legal implications of fabricated audio evidence. The case has become a teaching example in the forensic audio community about the importance of comprehensive analysis when authenticating recordings. Some people have asked if I feel conflicted about sending my own niece to prison. I feel no conflict whatsoever. Stephanie didn't just attempt theft. She desecrated Grandma's memory by manipulating her voice to create false statements. She violated everything Grandma stood for by using her voice as a tool for fraud. She showed complete disrespect for Grandma's actual wishes and complete disregard for family. Stephanie's choices were calculated and malicious. She spent months planning and executing fraud. She researched techniques. She practiced manipulation. She collected material deliberately. She showed no remorse until caught. She deserves 14 years and more for what she did. The fact that she's my niece doesn't diminish her crimes. It makes them worse because she had even more reason to honor Grandma's memory, and she chose to exploit it instead. Grandma would have been horrified to know Stephanie used her voice this way. Grandma valued honesty and integrity above everything. She spent her career as a journalist seeking truth. To have her own voice manipulated to create lies would have devastated her. I like to think that by exposing Stephanie's fraud, I honored Grandma's memory and protected her true wishes. Grandma wanted equal treatment of her grandchildren, and that's what ultimately happened. Justice was served not just legally, but morally. This is my story. I'm Dr. Michael Patterson, 44 years old, audio forensic analyst with 20 years of experience specializing in detecting manipulated recordings. My niece Stephanie created a fake video using edited audio clips to fabricate evidence that my 89-year-old grandmother wanted to leave her the entire $6.3 million estate. Stephanie spliced together audio from different conversations to make it appear Grandma was signing a new will. I used spectral analysis, waveform analysis, room tone analysis, and source audio comparison to prove the recording was extensively edited and fabricated. I found the exact source files Stephanie used, showing she'd taken phrases from conversations about salmon and gardening and made them appear to be about changing the will. Stephanie was convicted of attempted theft by fraud, forgery, elder abuse, and conspiracy. She was sentenced to 14 years in prison. Grandma's true will, splitting everything equally, was upheld. Stephanie is serving year 1 knowing she destroyed her life by attempting audio fraud. While her uncle is literally an expert in detecting audio fraud, she chose the worst possible target and paid the ultimate price. Justice for Grandma Catherine was served completely, and her true wishes were honored.